There are lives that seem to unfold like quiet miracles, lives that bend the arc of human possibility. And then there is the life of Buckminster Fuller. He was a man who began not with brilliance, but with failure. An expelled student, a struggling worker, a grieving father standing at the edge of despair, convinced his life had no purpose left to offer. The world remembers the genius, the geodesic domes, the radical designs, the world-changing ideas. But few remember that before the genius emerged, there was just a man standing alone on the shores of Lake Michigan, ready to walk away from everything. And yet, in that moment of darkness, something extraordinary happened. Fuller later described it as a cosmic interruption, an interior voice, not his own, telling him that his life was not his to throw away, that he belonged to the universe, and that from that day forward, his mission would be simple: to devote his entire life to understanding how one ordinary person could make the world work for all of humanity. From that moment, everything changed. He slept 2 hours a night, recorded every thought, sketched relentlessly, and built not inventions, but possibilities. A map of what the future could be if we dared to rethink our limits. He believed that humans were not meant to compete, but to cooperate. Not to consume, but to design a better path. And across the decades, that belief turned a broken man into one of the most original minds of the 20th century. And tonight, we follow his journey. Before we begin, if you love stories that reveal the hidden turning points of great lives, make sure to subscribe to Echoes of Greatness so you never miss a new bedtime history chapter. Now, let's step into the world of Buckminster Fuller. Chapter 1: Childhood and Early Work. Richard Buckminster Fuller entered the world on July 12, 1895, in the quiet, tree-lined town of Milton, Massachusetts. He was born into comfort, the son of Richard Buckminster Fuller, a successful dealer of leather and tea, and Caroline Walcott Andrews. Yet woven into his lineage was something far greater than wealth. He was the great-grandnephew of Margaret Fuller, the American journalist, critic, and pioneering feminist whose fierce intellect helped shape the Transcendentalist movement. Even his unusual middle name, Buckminster, came from an ancestral surname, a reminder that he belonged to a line of thinkers and reformers. But young Buckminster Fuller, long before he chose to sign his name simply as R. Buckminster Fuller, was not a prodigy nor a perfectly obedient student. In fact, he spent most of his childhood far from classrooms, wandering the rugged shores of Bear Island in Penobscot Bay, Maine, where his family kept a summer cottage. It was there, surrounded by wind-gnarled trees and cold Atlantic tides, that the foundations of his creative mind began to take shape. He attended a Froebelian kindergarten, a school inspired by hands-on discovery. Yet even as a child, he often found himself frustrated, especially with geometry. Teachers insisted that a chalk mark on a blackboard represented a mathematical point, something dimensionless, empty, infinite. To young Fuller, this felt absurd. He couldn't reconcile these abstractions with the solid, tangible world he touched every day. This early resistance would quietly point him toward the idea that would define his life: synergetics, the study of how shapes, forces, and systems work together in the real world. Instead of memorizing diagrams, he built things. He gathered sticks and bark from the island's forests, crafting gadgets and tools of his own design. And by age 12, he made something remarkable: a push-pull propulsion system for small boats. Using an upside-down umbrella attached to a paddle lock hinge at the stern, he created a way for a rower to face forward while steering. While others later called this an invention, Fuller disliked that word. It felt too small, too narrow for what he believed creativity really was. Years later, he would come to understand that these childhood experiments shaped more than his imagination. They taught him materials, how metal bends, how wood strains, how forces move through structure. He earned a mechanics certificate, learned to operate hydraulic presses, tensioning machines, and the specialized tools of sheet metal work. Without knowing it, Buckminster Fuller was gathering every skill he would one day need to reshape the way humanity might build its future. Chapter 2: Education and Wartime Experience. As Buckminster Fuller grew into adolescence, he stepped into a world far larger than the rocky coastlines of Bear Island. His formal education began at Milton Academy in Massachusetts, a place of tradition and prestige. From there, he entered the gates of Harvard University, joining Adams House, one of the historic residential communities that had shaped generations of American thinkers. But Fuller was never quite at ease among Harvard's polished halls. He was expelled twice. The first time, he burned through his entire allowance on parties and nights spent with a traveling vaudeville troupe, an impulsive detour far from the expectations of a Harvard man. When he returned, the second dismissal came swiftly, this time for what was officially called irresponsibility and lack of interest. Looking back, Fuller admitted that he had simply never belonged there. The fraternity culture, the academic formality, none of it fit the restless, questioning mind he carried within him. During his attempts at schooling, he took on jobs that grounded him in the real, physical world. In Canada, he worked as a mechanic in a textile mill, covered in the heavy heat of machinery. Later, he labored as a worker in the meatpacking industry, learning logistics, efficiency, and the unforgiving precision of industrial systems. Then the world changed. When World War I swept across the globe, Fuller joined the United States Navy. He served as a radio operator, then as an editor of a naval publication, and finally, as commander of the rescue vessel USS Inca. The sea, the discipline, the responsibility, these experiences hardened him, sharpened him. They taught him structure, communication, and the delicate balance between human life and engineered systems. When the war ended and he returned to civilian life, he found himself once again in the meatpacking industry, this time in management. The work was not glamorous, but it was steady, and it gave him a foundation in organization and industrial process. In 1917, he married Anne Hewlett, the woman who would stand beside him through triumphs and deep personal loss. Together with his father-in-law in the early 1920s, Fuller helped develop the stockade building system, a method of producing lightweight, weatherproof, fireproof houses. It was an ambitious project, a glimpse of the visionary engineer he would someday become. But in 1927, the company failed. It was a blow that would send Fuller into one of the darkest and most transformational chapters of his life, one that would change not only his future, but perhaps the future of design itself. Chapter 3: Depression and Revelation. By the time 1927 arrived, Buckminster Fuller would later recall it as the most pivotal year of his life, a year that pushed him to the deepest shadows and then lifted him toward a new sense of purpose. 5 years earlier, in 1922, tragedy had struck the Fuller family. His daughter Alexandra died from complications of polio and spinal meningitis, passing away just shy of her 4th birthday. Scholars like Barry Katz of Stanford University have pointed to these years as a period marked by deep depression and anxiety for Fuller. He often wondered whether Alexandra's death had been made worse by the family's damp, drafty living conditions, a haunting suspicion that pushed him to pursue the stockade building system, hoping to create affordable, weather-resistant homes for families like his own. But in 1927, at the age of 32, Fuller's world collapsed again. He was forced out of his role as president of the Stockade Company. The family had no savings, and with the birth of his second daughter, Allegra, that same year, their financial strain only tightened. Fuller drank heavily. He wandered the streets of Chicago on long, lonely walks, turning over the same impossible questions. How could he support his family? How could he rebuild? Was there any way forward at all? One autumn day in 1927, broken and exhausted, he considered ending his life in the cold waters of Lake Michigan. The insurance payout, he believed, might at least secure his family's survival. But at that darkest moment, something unexpected happened. Fuller later described experiencing a profound, almost otherworldly event. He felt himself rise, hovering several feet above the ground, surrounded by a sphere of clear, white light. And then, a voice spoke to him. From now on, you never need to await temporal attestation for your thinking. You think the truth. You do not have the right to eliminate yourself. You do not belong to you. You belong to the universe. Your significance will forever remain obscure to you, but you may assume that you are fulfilling your role if you apply yourself to converting your experiences into the highest advantage of others. This moment, Fuller said, shattered his despair. It launched a deep re-evaluation of his life, from his failures to his responsibilities, from his grief to his potential. He emerged with a new resolve, to embark on an experiment to discover what a single individual can contribute to changing the world and benefiting all humanity. He committed himself to thinking independently, to searching for the universal principles behind nature, technology, and human evolution. To do more with less, so that people everywhere could someday have more. By 1928, Fuller was living in Greenwich Village, spending his days and nights at the well-loved Romany Marie's Cafe. Years earlier, he had shared long conversations there with Marie herself and playwright Eugene O'Neill. Now he worked as the cafe's interior decorator in exchange for meals, gave informal talks several nights a week, and even displayed early models of his Dymaxion house for curious visitors. In 1929, a new face walked into the cafe, Isamu Noguchi, guided there by sculptor Konstantin Brancusi, a longtime friend of Marie. Noguchi and Fuller quickly found a shared creative spark. Together, they embarked on several projects, including prototypes for the Dymaxion car, inspired by the aerodynamic work of Aurel Persu. It was the beginning of a lifelong friendship, and the rebirth of a man who had once stood on the edge of despair, only to step instead into a future he would help reshape. Chapter 4. The Geodesic Dream. By the summer of 1948, the quiet hills of North Carolina held a curious energy. Black Mountain College, a small experimental school known for nurturing some of the century's most daring minds, had become Buckminster Fuller's temporary home. He returned again in 1949, this time as director of the Summer Institute, still carrying the gentle shyness that had followed him since youth. Fuller was never a natural performer. He spoke softly, walked cautiously, as if he feared taking up too much space in the world. But Black Mountain had a way of reshaping people. There, he found himself drawn into a whimsical stage production, Eric Satie's Le Piège de Méduse, directed by John Cage, who was also teaching at the college that year. During rehearsals, a young student, Arthur Penn, who would later become a renowned film director, guided Fuller through the awkwardness he felt in front of an audience. Slowly, something shifted. Fuller's voice steadied. His presence grew. For perhaps the first time, he felt the beginnings of confidence as a performer and public thinker. But behind the scenes, another revolution was forming. At Black Mountain, surrounded by curious students and supportive faculty, Fuller returned to a project that would define his legacy, the Geodesic Dome. Though the idea had first been invented, built, and patented on June 19, 1925 by Dr. Walter Bauersfeld in Germany, it was Fuller who later received the United States patent, his application notably making no reference to Bauersfeld's earlier self-supporting dome. History would often mistake Fuller as its original creator, but in truth, what he contributed was something different: visibility, scale, and a world-changing vision. One of Fuller's earliest physical models dated back to 1945, built at Bennington College in Vermont, where he lectured often. Bauersfeld's dome had been strong enough to carry a full layer of concrete, yet it wasn't until 1949 that Fuller erected a geodesic dome in America that could support its own weight without practical limitations. It stood just 4.3 meters, 14 feet, wide, shaped like a tidy icosahedron, built from aircraft aluminum tubing and vinyl plastic sheathing. To prove the strength of the frame, Fuller famously hung several students from it, swinging lightly like ornaments around a new idea. Soon, the U.S. government took notice. Fuller's company, Geodesics Inc., in Raleigh, North Carolina, was hired to produce small domes for the U.S. Marines. Within a few short years, thousands of these lightweight structures appeared across the world. Fuller continued refining the deeper structural logic. The concept of continuous tension, discontinuous compression, which he named Tensegrity in the 1960s, became the backbone of his later architectural philosophy. In 1959, with the help of students at the University of Oregon's School of Architecture, the first fully realized Tensegrity sphere was built. Compression members, never touching, suspended in a delicate network of tension, as if the structure itself were breathing. A dome that held together not by force, but by harmony. And so, in the quiet hours of American campuses and experimental colleges, Buckminster Fuller reshaped the geometry of shelter. One sleepless night, one curious mind, one improbable idea at a time. Chapter 5. The Dymaxion Chronofile. A life captured, a future imagined. As the world drifted through the first half of the 20th century, through wars, depressions, and revolutions of industry, Buckminster Fuller was quietly building something far more unusual than machines or houses. He was building a record of a life. For 50 years, he chronicled every thought, every calculation, every experiment, and every moment of his daily existence. This immense archive would later be known as the Dymaxion Chronofile, one of the most detailed personal life logs ever kept by a human being. But the Chronofile wasn't just a diary. It was Fuller's attempt to measure whether one individual, working with dedication and clarity, could truly contribute to humanity's progress. Page by page, sketch by sketch, idea by idea, he tried to find the answer. During these decades, Fuller didn't just write, he created. With inherited funds and occasional investments from colleagues, he launched bold experiments in affordable living and efficient transportation. Among the most iconic of these projects was the Dymaxion car, showcased at the Chicago World's Fair of 1933 to 1934, an era still shrouded in the harsh shadows of the Great Depression. Working with renowned naval architect Starling Burgess and a team of 27 craftsmen, Fuller built 3 prototypes. The name Dymaxion, fusing dynamic, maximum, and tension, captured his guiding philosophy: maximum benefit from minimum energy. Yet, the Dymaxion wasn't merely a car. It was the ground-rolling mode of a future omni-medium transport. A vehicle Fuller imagined would one day fly, land, and drive across air, land, and water. Its aerodynamic form, chrome moly steel frame, rear-mounted V8 engine, and 3-wheel steering system made it look like it had slipped out of the future. So narrow was its turning radius that crowds would gather just to watch it pivot almost within its own length. But innovation often dances close to danger. Shortly after its debut, one prototype overturned in a tragic accident. A driver was killed and a passenger severely injured. Fuller insisted the crash had been caused by another vehicle striking the Dymaxion, but witnesses claimed the opposite, that the futuristic machine had already begun to tip before the collision occurred. Despite attention from major industrial leaders, Fuller poured the last of his inheritance into refining the second and third prototypes. Eventually, all 3 were sold, the Dymaxion Corporation dissolved, and the project quietly stepped back into history. Only one original Dymaxion car survives today, a relic of Fuller's restless vision. And through it all, he kept writing, preserving every triumph, every failure, every spark of insight. An entire life captured in the Dymaxion Chronofile. Chapter 6. The Housing Projects. Homes of wind, light, and impossible dreams. As the mid-20th century unfolded, while the world looked toward reconstruction and renewal, Buckminster Fuller turned his imagination toward one of humanity's oldest needs: shelter. But as always, he approached it not with tradition, but with audacity. For Fuller, a house was not simply a place to sleep. It was a machine for living lightly on Earth. His most famous attempt at reinventing the home was the Dymaxion house, a low-cost, energy-efficient structure that captured enormous attention despite only 2 prototypes ever being completed. Here, the word Dymaxion once again echoed Fuller's philosophy: maximum strength, minimum weight. One of these rare houses now rests permanently at the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan, standing like a polished artifact from a future that never arrived. Designed in the mid-1940s, the Dymaxion house wasn't a dome at all. Instead, it resembled the flattened bell of a translucent jellyfish, circular, lightweight, and futuristic. Inside were innovations far ahead of their time: rotating drawer cabinets, and even a mist spray shower that dramatically reduced water use. Its circular top, engineered to rotate around a central mast, allowed natural wind to cool and circulate air through the structure. Though the idea had been conceived nearly 2 decades earlier, Fuller developed it in Wichita, Kansas, where powerful winds shaped both climate and design. The house was lightweight, affordable, and simple to assemble, ideal for families who wished to move with ease rather than settle permanently. Fuller even imagined a go-ahead with life room, filled with charts, maps, and tools for navigating through time and space, a traveler's sanctuary in the age of modernity. The houses were meant to be mass-produced, using the same factories and workers who had built American aircraft during World War II. Sleek aluminum panels and polished metal gave the Dymaxion house a startlingly modern look. The base model offered 970 square feet, compact, efficient, and strangely beautiful. In the optimistic years just after the war, thousands of orders poured in. But the company Fuller and his partners formed collapsed under poor management. The Dymaxion house, for all its promise, remained mostly a dream. Yet Fuller did not stop dreaming. In 1967, he imagined an entire floating offshore city, Triton City. A year later, he released a full report, and the concept attracted the interest of President Lyndon B. Johnson, who later displayed the models in his presidential library. Then, in 1969, Fuller began the Otisco project in Otisco, New York, an experiment that pushed architecture into entirely new territory. With funding from Syracuse University and support from U.S. Steel, Johnson Wire Corp., and Portland Cement, Fuller developed a method for spraying concrete over mesh-covered molds to create massive, load-bearing forms without traditional scaffolding or molds. Using a circular concrete foundation, steel tubes, and rhombic duodecahedral geometry, these structures, reinforced geodesic domes, rose like giant stone shells. They were strong, resilient, and adaptable to other shapes such as cones, vaults, and pyramids. Some domes reached 3 stories high and proved remarkably sturdy. This technique, Fuller believed, could one day allow humanity to build entire cities of lightweight, durable concrete structures, quickly, affordably, and with minimal material waste. Many architects now regard this innovation as one of Fuller's greatest contributions. And so, piece by piece, Fuller continued reshaping the idea of home, not as a fixed place, but as a vessel for human possibility. Chapter 7: The World Stage. By the early 1950s, Buckminster Fuller's ideas, once whispered at the edges of architecture and invention, were finally stepping into the light of global recognition. And it all began with the triumph of his enormous geodesic domes, structures so impossibly strong and so impossibly light that they seemed to defy gravity itself. These domes didn't just shelter people, they captured the world's imagination. In 1949, while teaching at North Carolina State University in Raleigh, Fuller met a young architect named James Fitzgibbon. The two would become lifelong friends and collaborators. Fitzgibbon later directed Geodesics Inc. and Synergetics Inc., the first companies ever licensed to design geodesic domes. Working alongside him was Thomas C. Howard, the principal designer, architect, and engineer whose hands translated Fuller's geometry into living, breathing structures. At the same time, a newly hired population geneticist, Richard Lewontin, was quietly running computer calculations on the edge lengths of Fuller's domes, turning theory into precise engineering. In these small academic rooms, the future was being built. Fuller's world expanded again in 1954 when he began collaborating with architect Shoji Sadao. Together, they imagined the unimaginable. In 1960, they designed a hypothetical dome big enough to cover all of Manhattan, sealing a city beneath a shimmering geometric sky. And in 1964, they founded their own firm, Fuller and Sadao Inc. Their first major project? The breathtaking geodesic dome built for the United States Pavilion at Expo 67 in Montreal, a structure the world now knows as the Montreal Biosphere. As Fuller's visions grew, so did his influence. To rebuild models lost in a 1959 apartment fire, he recruited graduates from Southern Illinois University Carbondale, SIU. This soon led his longtime friend Harold Cohen to bring Fuller on as a professor of design science exploration. According to architect John Davey, the role felt less like a teaching post and more like a visiting genius. Fuller spent only 2 months a year on campus, yet his time there was remarkably productive. SIU promoted him to university professor in 1968 and university professor emeritus in 1972. Throughout these years, Fuller traveled the world, teaching, speaking, building, writing. In 1965, he and researcher John McHale launched the World Design Science Decade, 1965 to 1975, at the International Union of Architects meeting in Paris. Its goal, Fuller declared, was nothing less than applying scientific principles to solve humanity's problems. From 1972 to 1975, Fuller held a joint professorship at Southern Illinois University Edwardsville, where in 1971 he designed the campus's sweeping religious center dome. At the same time, he held a fellowship across a consortium of Philadelphia institutions, the University of Pennsylvania, Bryn Mawr, Haverford, Swarthmore, and the Philadelphia City Science Center. By 1975, the University of Pennsylvania named him University Professor Emeritus. Through it all, Fuller preached a future fueled by renewable energy, sunlight, wind, and the quiet abundance of nature. He dreamed of a planet where every human could be educated, housed, and sustained. He called himself a trim tab, a tiny force redirecting the course of the world, a property of the universe, as he liked to say, a man working not for himself, but for all humanity. In 1969, the American Humanist Association named him Humanist of the Year, and in 1976, he took the global stage once more as a key participant in UN Habitat 1, the United Nations' first forum on human settlements. Chapter by chapter, continent by continent, Fuller had become more than an inventor. He had become a storyteller of the future, inviting the world to imagine what could be. Chapter 8. Philosophy. Buckminster Fuller was, at his core, a monist, following a philosophical path much like his grandfather, Arthur Buckminster Fuller, who was a Unitarian minister. Fuller's worldview was expansive, yet grounded. From early on, he recognized that Earth's resources were finite, and he championed a principle he called ephemeralization. As described by futurist and Fuller protege Stuart Brand, ephemeralization meant doing more with less, using limited resources to create greater value and recycling materials that would otherwise go to waste. Every inefficiency could be transformed into an advantage, increasing the overall effectiveness of human endeavor. Fuller also introduced the term synergetics, a concept capturing the study of systems and their behavior as wholes, rather than as a sum of isolated parts. In his view, understanding the universe meant observing patterns, forces, and interactions, seeing the unpredictable dance of systems that no single component could define alone. A pioneer of global thinking, Fuller explored energy efficiency, material use, and design across architecture, engineering, and urban planning. In his 1981 book, Critical Path, he cited François de Chadenède, 1920 to 1999, who calculated that the production cost of oil, measured in terms of net solar energy throughput, imposed a hidden burden
of over $1 million per US gallon. Fuller interpreted this as an absurdly inefficient system. Using oil for daily transportation was a net loss for humanity. His conclusion was clear. There is no energy crisis. There is a crisis of ignorance. Yet Fuller was never pessimistic. He redefined wealth in terms of knowledge, the technological ability to protect, nourish, support, and fulfill all growth needs of life. By the 1970s, he believed humanity had reached an unprecedented state. Knowledge had accumulated, recycled resources had been extracted, and competition for basic necessities was becoming obsolete. Cooperation, Fuller argued, was humanity's optimal survival strategy. In his words, selfishness is unnecessary and therefore cannot be justified. War is obsolete. Fuller was influenced by Alfred Korzybski's general semantics. In the 1950s, he attended seminars and workshops at the Institute of General Semantics and even delivered the annual Alfred Korzybski Memorial Lecture in 1955. Their approaches shared remarkable parallels, particularly in how language and systems shape human understanding. Korzybski is mentioned in the introduction to Fuller's seminal work, Synergetics. In his 1970 book, I Seem to Be a Verb, Fuller reflected, "At present I live on Earth, and I do not know what I am. I know that I am not a category. I am not a thing, a noun. I seem to be a verb, an evolutionary process, a necessary function of the universe."
He described the universe as naturally organized through tetrahedral geometry, exploring the packing of spheres and the minimal elements of tension and compression needed to stabilize structures in space. From this arose his conclusion that the strongest uniform framework could be a repeating tetrahedral lattice. Fuller became a master of design, architecture, and alternative communities, leaving a lasting mark on experimental spaces. In 1966, he awarded the Dymaxion Prize to Drop City, a community of experimental artists, for their geodesic domes, structures both economical and poetic, symbolizing his lifelong vision of functional beauty in human habitation. Chapter 9. Lifestyle. After achieving global recognition in the 1960s, Buckminster Fuller became a constant traveler, frequently crossing time zones to deliver lectures, consultations, and share his vision with the world. During the 1960s and 1970s, Fuller famously wore 3 watches at once, one set to the time of his office at Southern Illinois University, another for the time zone of his next destination, and a third for his current location. This meticulous attention to time reflected his disciplined and almost mechanical approach to living. By the 1970s, Fuller spent only about 65 nights a year in what he considered his home bases, his house in Carbondale, Illinois, his summer retreat on Bear Island, Maine, and his daughter's home in Pacific Palisades, California. The remaining 300 nights were spent in hotel rooms around the world, following his relentless schedule of lectures and consultations. Long before this, in the 1920s, Fuller experimented with polyphasic sleep, a pattern he called Dymaxion sleep. Inspired by the sleep habits of animals such as dogs and cats, he would work until exhaustion and then take very short naps, about 30 minutes every 6 hours. This allowed him to think 22 hours a day, dramatically increasing his productivity. He maintained this rigorous schedule for about 2 years before abandoning it, as it conflicted with the routines of his business partners. Yet, even after discontinuing the practice, Fuller proposed Dymaxion sleep in 1943 as a strategy the United States might adopt to maximize efficiency during World War II. Despite practicing polyphasic sleep only briefly, Fuller remained remarkably enduring throughout his life. Journalist Barry Farrell, writing for Life magazine, described him as tireless, noting that Fuller once stayed awake all night responding to letters during Ferrell's visit to Bear Island in 1970. By the age of 70, Fuller generally slept 5 to 8 hours per night, balancing rest with relentless intellectual work. Fuller's devotion to meticulous documentation extended to the entirety of his life. From 1915 to 1983, he recorded daily experiences, thoughts, and ideas in what became the monumental Dymaxion Chronofile, about 270 feet, 82 meters of paper. He also preserved copies of all incoming and outgoing correspondence. Today, this extraordinary archive is housed at Stanford University, offering a detailed window into the mind and life of a man who sought to document, understand, and improve the human condition. Fuller once said that to create such an exact record of a person's life, spanning from the 1890s into the 20th century, he had to refrain from judgment. Every detail, no matter how small, was preserved. Thus began his rigorous chronicle, an unparalleled biography of one individual navigating a rapidly changing world.
Chapter 10: Language and Neologisms.
Buckminster Fuller spoke and wrote in a style uniquely his own, insisting that it was crucial to describe the world as accurately as possible. He often crafted long, winding sentences and invented unusual compound words like omni-well informed, intertransformative, omni-interaccommodative, and omni-self-regenerative, alongside terms entirely of his own creation. Fuller described his rapid, breathless delivery and wandering thoughts as thinking out loud, a style that, combined with his dry tone and New England accent lacking the letter R, was often considered hypnotic or overwhelming. Fuller consistently used the word universe without any article, never the or a, always capitalized. He wrote, "I want to refer to universe, the synthesis of experiences consciously apprehended and communicated by all humanity, either for oneself or others." He found words like up and down peculiar, as they implied a flat notion of direction, inconsistent with human experience. Fuller proposed using in and out instead, better reflecting the relationship of objects to the Earth's gravitational center. "I suggest audiences say, 'I am going out and coming in.' At first it sounds strange to them, everyone laughs, but after trying it for a few days, they begin to realize they are actually moving in and out relative to the Earth's center, our Spaceship Earth. For the first time, they begin to sense true reality." Fuller preferred world around over worldwide, reasoning that the concept of a flat Earth was long gone, and that wide was an outdated notion when describing a spherical surface. His daughter, Allegra Fuller Snyder, noted that other neologisms created with family members included sunsight and sunclipse, replacing sunrise and sunset, challenging geocentric biases of pre-Copernican mechanics. He invented the term livingry, opposite of weaponry, to describe tools and systems that support all life, human, plant, and Earth itself. Architecture, civil, naval, aeronautical, and spacefaring, has always been the locus of the most competent thinking about livingry, as opposed to weaponry. Fuller coined tensegrity, a combination of tensional integrity, to describe a structural principle where a shape is maintained by the system's continuous, closed tension network, rather than by local, discontinuous compression. This allowed structures to withstand increasing bending without breaking or coming apart. The term Dymaxion, a blend of dynamic maximum tension, was coined around 1929 by two marketing professionals at Marshall Field's department store in Chicago to describe Fuller's concept house, exhibited as part of the House of the Future. The name captured Fuller's goals: dynamic, maximum, and tension.
He also popularized the idea of Spaceship Earth, remarking, "The most important fact about Spaceship Earth, it has no instruction manual." Fuller's distinctive style even extended to storytelling.
In the preface to his Tetrascroll, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, he described how years of embellishing the classic tale for his daughter allowed him to explore both new theories and ways of expressing them. The story of the tetrahedron was eventually printed on a set of tetrahedron lithographs, hence the title, and also published as a conventional book. However, Fuller's inventive language sometimes posed challenges to his reputation. John Julius Norwich recalled asking Fuller to write a 600-word introduction for a global architectural history project, only to receive a 3,500-word essay, ending with a sentence that spiraled through concepts of human civilization, Mayan foundations, maritime technology, aviation, rockets, microcosms, and invisible architecture, all in one breath. Fuller's words, full of new meanings and carefully constructed ideas, reflected a lifetime of observation, invention, and striving to communicate the patterns of the universe in ways that stretched conventional language and the listener's imagination. Chapter 11. Influence and Legacy. Buckminster Fuller's influence stretched far and wide, touching the lives and work of many. Among those inspired by him were Constance Abernathy, Ruth Asawa, J. Baldwin, Michael Ben Eli, Pierre Cabral, John Cage, Joseph Clinton, Peter Floyd, Norman Foster, Medard Gable, Michael Hayes, Ted Nelson, David Johnston, Peter John Pierce, Shoji Sadao, Edwin Schlossberg, Kenneth Snelson, Robert Anton Wilson, Stuart Brand, Jason McLennan, and John Denver. A remarkable tribute to Fuller came from the world of chemistry. A form of carbon known as fullerene, and a specific molecule of that form, C60, commonly called Buckminster fullerene, or buckyball, was named in his honor. The C60 molecule, made of 60 carbon atoms, strikingly resembled the spherical shape of Fuller's geodesic domes. In 1996, the Nobel Prize in Chemistry was awarded to Kroto, Curl, and Smalley for the discovery of fullerenes. On July 12, 2004, the United States Postal Service issued a commemorative stamp celebrating Fuller, marking the 50th anniversary of his geodesic dome patent and what would have been his 109th birthday. The stamp's design echoed the January 10, 1964, cover of Time magazine, highlighting the cultural impact of his work. Fuller's life and ideas have been captured on film as well. 2 documentaries focused on him: The World of Buckminster Fuller, 1971, and Buckminster Fuller, Thinking Out Loud, 1996. In 2012, filmmaker Sam Green collaborated with the band Yo La Tengo to produce a live documentary performance, Our Buckminster Fuller's Song, blending music, storytelling, and Fuller's visionary ideas. In June 2008, the Whitney Museum of American Art presented Buckminster Fuller, Starting with the Universe, the most comprehensive retrospective of his work to date. The exhibition traveled to the Museum of Contemporary Art, Chicago in 2009. It showcased a wide array of models, sketches, and artifacts spanning 6 decades, illustrating Fuller's integrated approach to housing, transportation, media, and mapping. The exhibition also highlighted Fuller's deep connections to Chicago, where he had lived, taught, and worked. Fuller's influence even found its way into toys. In 2009, several US companies repackaged spherical magnets for sale. Maxfield and Overton told the New York Times that they were inspired by videos on YouTube showing the magnets forming shapes reminiscent of Fuller's buckyballs. These toys debuted at the New York International Gift Fair in 2009,
and sold hundreds of thousands, though by 2010, safety concerns led to a recall of the labeled sets. In 2012, the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art hosted The Utopian Impulse, an exhibition exploring Fuller's influence in the Bay Area. The show presented concepts, inventions, and designs focused on generating free energy from natural forces and isolating carbon from the atmosphere. The exhibition ran from January through July.
Most recently, in 2025, historian Eva Diaz published After Spaceship Earth, Art, Techno-Utopia, and Other Science Fictions with Yale University Press, examining Fuller's enduring legacy in contemporary culture. Diaz's book explores artistic and design projects that employ geodesic domes in varied contexts, architectural responses to climate change, exhibition and media spaces, housing crisis interventions, and critiques of corporate and government surveillance. It also considers the influence of Fuller and Stuart Brand on works that explore space exploration and colonization. Through all these recognitions, exhibitions, and inspirations, Fuller's vision of a thoughtful, inventive, and interconnected humanity continues to ripple through art, science, architecture, and culture, reminding us that his ideas were not just designs or inventions, but a way of seeing the world anew. Chapter 12. Closing. As the night deepens and your eyes grow heavy, let us take one last journey together through the life and legacy of Buckminster Fuller, a man who dreamed in domes, vehicles, and new ways of thinking about the Earth itself. We have wandered through his geodesic domes, peered inside the Dymaxion houses, followed the flight of Dymaxion cars, and listened to the rhythm of his Dymaxion sleep. We've seen how he recorded a life in meticulous detail through the Chronofile, how he reshaped language with words like Tensegrity and livingry, and how he challenged the world to rethink what is possible. Fuller's life was a testament to curiosity and perseverance. He believed in the potential of humanity to live harmoniously with the planet, to use energy wisely, and to solve problems through cooperation rather than competition. He imagined a world where technology could elevate life rather than endanger it, where design could meet the needs of everyone, and where knowledge accumulated across generations would serve the common good. He called this the era of the Spaceship Earth, reminding us that our home, the planet, has no instruction manual, but we do have the capacity to care for it. Even in the quiet moments of reflection, Fuller's vision whispers to us. The geodesic dome, sturdy yet elegant, teaches balance. The Dymaxion concepts, whether a car, house, or map, teach efficiency, resourcefulness, and playfulness in design. His words remind us to look beyond convention, to create new ways to express thought and to measure reality. Omni-well informed, intertransformative, world around. Each coined term was more than language. It was a small bridge connecting human imagination to cosmic understanding. Fuller's story is not just about inventions or accolades. It's about perspective, the lens through which we see the world and our place in it. It is about asking questions that feel impossible, sketching answers that seem fantastical, and daring to live in a way that honors the Earth while expanding human possibility. And tonight, as you settle beneath the comfort of your blankets, let his life serve as a gentle reminder. There is always room to think bigger, to act with care, and to dream with audacity. If you've enjoyed drifting through the stories of Fuller's life, the quiet wonders of his inventions, and the gentle hum of his philosophies, I invite you to stay with us. Subscribe to the channel so that each night we can journey together into the stories of history, art, science, and the extraordinary lives that shaped our world. Leave a comment or a like
to share which part of Fuller's story captured your imagination the most. Your thoughts help us continue exploring these tales for everyone who seeks a little magic before sleep. Now, take a slow breath. Let your mind float like a Dymaxion car gliding across an open plain or a geodesic dome resting beneath the sky.
Feel the curiosity, the wonder, and the possibility settle within you. Drift gently into sleep, carrying with you the echoes of a man who imagined not just buildings or machines, but an entire way of seeing the world. Careful, kind, and endlessly inventive. Good night, and may your dreams be full of wonder, like the geodesic visions of Buckminster Fuller.